They were making $7,000 a month, living in Las Vegas. And still, they ended up drowning in over $120,000 of debt. No assets. No savings. Just missed opportunities, quiet resentment, and a relationship falling apart. This is the true story of how two people went from financial stability to emotional and financial breakdown, and what they could have done to stop it. Kylie and Timothy lived in Las Vegas, a young couple in their early 30s raising a child and bringing in a combined income of $7,000 a month. Most people would assume they were doing just fine. But behind closed doors, they were drowning. By the way, if you're serious about breaking that cycle and learning how to manage, grow, and protect your money, hit that subscribe button. Kylie earned about $2,600 a month working in life insurance. Timothy, a freelance interior and concept designer, brought in around $4,400 monthly. Together, they were pulling in more than enough to survive and even thrive if managed wisely. But their story is a reminder that income alone doesn't build wealth. Discipline does. Communication does. Shared responsibility does. It all started when Kylie had a complicated pregnancy. To support her, Timothy stepped away from his job to be a stay-at-home dad. At first, it seemed like a thoughtful move. A necessary pause. But what was supposed to be temporary became permanent. Months went by. Then a year. Then two. Kylie went back to work, took care of the child, and paid the bills, all while Timothy remained home. He said he was looking for freelance work, but nothing ever came through. In reality, he had slipped into a pattern of avoidance. Quiet complacency disguised as taking time. Meanwhile, the expenses kept growing. And their spending? It didn't slow down. They went to Disneyland, bought expensive gifts, dined out regularly, and they did it all without a single emergency fund in place. Kylie knew something had to change. So she tried taking on a second job in retail. But there was a problem. Timothy didn't want to put their child in daycare. His refusal blocked her ability to work more hours and earn extra income. So again, she carried the burden alone. Eventually, their relationship began to crack. Kylie begged Timothy to find a job. He stalled. She pushed. He resisted. The silence between them became louder than their words. What they didn't realize at the time was that their biggest problem wasn't financial. It was emotional. The lack of teamwork. The imbalance. The growing resentment. Kylie was exhausted. Not just from working, but from being the only one who seemed to care about their future. And Timothy, instead of stepping up, blamed her frustration on anxiety, on parenting stress, on anything but his own inaction. And then came the reality check. They sat down and looked at the numbers. The truth was staggering. They were over $122,000 in debt. Almost $30,000 of that was owed to Timothy's parents alone. And they didn't have a single asset to offset it. No house. No savings. No investments. Just a long list of credit cards, loans, and unpaid bills. What had started as a temporary break had turned into a financial disaster. And the worst part? They didn't even see it happening. Because it didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly. Every time they chose comfort over communication. Every time they avoided a hard conversation. Every time they spent instead of saved. It built up, one decision at a time, until the weight was too much to bear. Kylie felt like she was losing everything, her money, her relationship, and her peace. And Timothy? He didn't understand why she was so angry. Why she had started to question whether they could even continue as a couple. But the truth was simple. It wasn't about the money. It was about trust. She could no longer trust him to show up. And when trust breaks, money problems are just the beginning. Now here's the thing. Their story isn't rare. In fact, it's far too common. People believe that as long as they earn enough, things will work themselves out. But financial success doesn't come from income alone. It comes from alignment. From shared goals. From knowing how to work together, especially when things get hard. Kylie and Timothy had the income. But they didn't have the plan. They didn't have the balance. And eventually, they didn't have the connection. So what can we learn from their experience? One of the biggest mistakes Kylie and Timothy made wasn't just overspending, it was silence. They weren't having honest conversations about money. And by the time they finally did, the damage was done. According to a study by Ramsey Solutions, money fights are the second leading cause of divorce, just behind infidelity. What's more alarming? The majority of couples, nearly 1 in 3, admit they don't regularly talk about their finances. And yet, couples who set financial goals together and check in monthly report higher satisfaction, better trust, and far less stress. It's not just about budgeting or paying bills, it's about aligning your values. When one partner prioritizes savings and the other wants instant gratification, tension builds. Resentment grows. And in the silence, debt quietly multiplies. Kylie and Timothy didn't fail because they lacked income. They failed because they lacked clarity. They assumed things were fine until it was far too late to fix them easily. So if you're in a relationship, start talking, even if it's uncomfortable. Lay out your debts. Review your monthly expenses. Ask each other, what does financial freedom look like to us? How do we define success? A paid-off home? A travel budget? 0 credit card debt? When you understand each other's money story, how you were raised around finances, what you fear, what you value, you gain the power to build something sustainable. Something real. Because the truth is, if you can't talk about money, it's only a matter of time before money starts talking for you, through stress, fights, and unpaid bills. The best time to start? Before there's a problem. The second best time? Right now. After years of earning $7,000 a month, Kylie and Timothy hit a crisis, and they had nothing to fall back on. No savings. No safety net. No cushion for the unexpected. And that's the second big lesson from their story. You need an emergency fund. Even if it's small. Even if you're starting from zero. According to a report from Bankrate, nearly 60% of Americans wouldn't be able to cover a $1,000 emergency with savings. That means most people are just one car repair, one medical bill, or one job loss away from serious financial stress. Life is unpredictable. And it's not a matter of if something will go wrong, it's when. That's why it's not about how much you save at first. It's about building the habit. Even $20 a week, the cost of a few coffees or takeout meals, adds up to over $1,000 in a year. That $1,000 could be the difference between staying afloat or falling into credit card debt with 20% interest. For Kylie and Timothy, not having an emergency fund meant every surprise became a setback. A flat tire turned into a crisis. A missed freelance gig meant borrowing money from family. And that pattern chipped away at their financial confidence and their relationship. Building an emergency fund gives you control. It gives you options. It gives you time to think instead of react. And most importantly, it gives you peace of mind, knowing that even if something unexpected happens, you won't be starting from zero. So if you're watching this and your savings account reads $0, don't panic. Just start. Even if it's $5, $10, $20 a week, build the habit first. Because money saved is more than a number, it's security, it's freedom, and it's power in the moments you need it most. The last takeaway is, one of the most painful parts of Kylie and Timothy's story isn't just the debt or the missed opportunities. It's that for 2 whole years Kylie was carrying everything alone. The income, the stress, the emotional weight, the decisions, all of it was on her shoulders, while Timothy stood still. And here's the truth, no relationship can survive like that for long. Financial responsibility in a household should be a partnership, not a solo act. Whether it's earning income, managing bills, planning for the future, or raising kids, both partners have to be invested in the outcome. Not just in words, but in action. When one person becomes the default financial decision-maker, the pressure multiplies. And eventually, that pressure turns into resentment. That's exactly what happened to Kylie. She didn't just feel tired, she felt abandoned. And Timothy? He may have told himself he was being supportive by staying home. But over time, his inaction stopped being helpful and became harmful. This isn't just about who makes more money. It's about shared effort, shared sacrifice, and shared accountability. Research from the Journal of Family and Economic Issues shows that couples who share financial duties, including budgeting, saving, and discussing big purchases, report higher relationship satisfaction and significantly lower levels of financial stress. Why? Because it builds trust. It builds teamwork. It reminds each partner that they're not in this alone. When Kylie begged Timothy to get a job, it wasn't just about the paycheck. It was about needing a partner, someone who would fight alongside her, not sit on the sidelines. So if you're in a relationship and you feel like you're carrying all the financial weight, pause. Talk. Rebalance. Because when money responsibility is one-sided, it creates an emotional imbalance too. And over time, that imbalance can collapse everything. Real financial stability doesn't come from one hero holding it all together. It comes from 2 people moving in the same direction, even if one moves slower than the other, as long as they move together. Now here's the part that's easy to overlook, but could have changed everything for Kylie and Timothy. They were bringing in $7,000 a month. That's $84,000 a year. And yet, they ended up over $120,000 in debt, with nothing to show for it. But what if they had used that same income, not to survive but to build? Let's imagine a different version of their story. The moment their child was born, they created a budget using a free tool like NAB, You Need a Budget, or Mint. Both tools help track every dollar, separate needs from wants, and automate savings goals. They set a simple rule, 50/30/20. 50% of their income went to essentials like rent, groceries, and transportation. 30% went to flexible spending. And the remaining 20%? That went to building their future. With $7,000 a month, that 20% equals $1,400 every month. Let's say they stuck to it. In just 1 year, they'd have $16,800 saved. That's more than enough to build an emergency fund and start investing. From there, they could have used free platforms like Fidelity, Charles Schwab, or Robinhood to start investing in low-cost index funds, like the S&P 500 ETF. Historically, the S&P 500 has returned an average of 7 to 10% annually after inflation. That means their $16,800 consistently invested could double in about 7 to 8 years, passively. But it doesn't end there. What if Timothy used some of that monthly surplus, say $300 a month, to learn a new high-demand skill using free courses on YouTube, Coursera, or LinkedIn Learning? Skills like copywriting, digital marketing, financial coaching, AI-powered content creation, or even remote project management. These skills can open doors to freelance income, side businesses, or remote consulting, all with low startup cost and high growth potential. That same $300 investment in knowledge and tools could eventually bring in an extra $2,000 to $3,000 a month. Multiply that by a year, and now we're talking real income growth. The truth is, we're living in a time where the tools to build wealth are more accessible than ever. Budgeting apps, free investment platforms, free education, automation, AI, digital skills, side hustles, remote work. What's missing for most people? Discipline, a plan, and action. Kylie and Timothy didn't need a raise. They needed a roadmap. And so do we. Because if you're earning $7,000 a month and feel like you're stuck, it's not your income. It's your system. Fix the system and you change your story. If this story made you stop and think, you're not alone. Every week, we break down real financial situations just like this one. Why? Because the best way to avoid mistakes is to learn from the people who've already made them. So if you're ready to take control of your money, your mindset, and your future, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to turn on notifications. More powerful stories, more honest lessons, more real advice all coming your way. Your comeback story starts here.